Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, I, Aaron, am having a conversation with Dr. Jason Carter, the Dean of the Robbins College of Health and Human Sciences at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Jason is a friend of mine, a former member at St. Peter and Paul in Houghton, Michigan, and a former faculty member at Michigan Tech. Jason is a sleep researcher, and so in this conversation, we're going to be talking about sleep, but sleep from a biblical perspective. What is sleep? What's going on during it? How much sleep should we get? All of those kinds of questions. There's practical advice you're going to gain from this as well if you have trouble sleeping or staying asleep. And so I pray that, as always, you will hear something in this conversation that will inspire you to start another conversation with somebody else. As always, I hope you enjoy it. Well, I forgot to heads up you, but I don't know if we usually start with a cheers, but I don't know if you.
I don't have my coffee. I would. I already, yeah. Shoot.
You're
Cheers.
all filled up on your coffee.
Coffee is an antagonist to sleep. I mean, when we talk about sleep,
Sure.
okay. Yeah,
No.
like what do we do when we invite people to church? We give them coffee and sugar and donuts and all that stuff's not great for our sleep. No, though, I always tell people the half-life of caffeine is 6 hours. And so if you drink 2 cups of coffee, right, 6 hours later, you still have a cup of that caffeine in you. And 6 hours after that, you still have half a cup in you. So, I mean, people who drink like 4 or 5 cups of coffee, you go to bed and you still got two and a half cups of coffee in you.
Holy
So
smokes.
caffeine is really one of these things. There are several things that can disrupt sleep. And we've studied some of this stuff. And
Yeah.
caffeine is one of these things, like I try to cut myself out after 2 cups early in the morning.
Yeah. That's about my go-to as well. So
Yeah. Well, I would.
hey, we gotta jump into a lot of different stuff.
Okay.
But just real quick, Jason, we should say hey and just briefly introduce yourself. There's a lot of folks listening to this who know you and probably are excited to hear your voice again and see you, but a lot of people who don't too. So
Yeah.
just a little, I don't know, little bit on you,
Yeah.
family, that kind of stuff, and then we'll get into the topic here in a little bit.
Well, awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. And Jason Carter, I am the Dean of the Robbins College of Health and Human Sciences at Baylor University. I study sleep, and sleep research has been in my veins for ever since I was back there at Michigan Tech. So my career pathway was I was at Michigan Tech for 16 years. I launched the kinesiology program there and ended up kind of working my way up through. Had a great opportunity to bounce out to Montana State, where I was the vice president for research out there for a few years, and then Baylor came knocking, and it was just a kind of a convergence of many things. Baylor being a Christian university, the only really Christian R1 university that has the conversation with every faculty and staff of are you faith driven, and will you put this into practice with our students? And so it was just a great
Hmm.
opportunity to go to a tier 1 research university that still hasn't lost that faith-based mission. So we're down in
That's
Texas,
awesome.
Waco, Texas now.
Yeah.
My wife Kathy, my daughter Peyton. Peyton is now 16 years old and doing well, and she's starting to think about where she wants to go to college and different kinds of things. She's a sophomore. But no, we were there at St. Peter and Paul and saw it. Kathy and I got married in the old church over in Hancock, and
Ah,
we were through the whole process of building the new church and everything, and just excited to be here with you and chat a little
yeah,
bit about sleep.
absolutely. My old racquetball buddy too.
I
So
know we did. Yes, yes. I remember those scars I'd get on my calves when you'd hit me really hard with that ball.
hey, it's all, if you're in the way, I gotta
Hey,
remind you
gotta get out of
you're
the
in the
way.
way. uh, yeah. So we're just gonna have a conversation. That's what we do on this podcast. But I mean, I told you I didn't want to like interview you or anything, but I do have a bunch of questions and curiosity about
Yeah.
sleep. But
Yeah.
I mean, where this came from too is we were preaching through the days of creation,
Uh-huh.
and I just preached this last week on day 7 on God resting, and
Yeah.
and it's this, if you think about it, it's like, well, why did God have to rest?
You're right.
You
You're
know,
right.
and the Hebrew word there is actually it does it kind of it means to stop working to be complete, but also has built into it this idea of like celebrating and delighting. So it's not like for God, his rest isn't it's not inactivity. It's not he's not burned out. He's not weary. That doesn't happen to a perfect God. He's
Mhm.
actually he's actually there celebrating and delighting with his creation in the perfect creation that he's made. And so in the sermon, I was just talking about uh, kind of our relationship or this pattern that we live in life from what, if you kind of boil it down from like work, rest, work, rest, work. And it's just sort of this cycle that we go through, and people have unhealthy relationships both with work and with rest. Some
Mhm.
people have the idea like, sleeps for the weak. I can sleep
Yeah.
when I'm dead. Other people unhealthy relationship with work, like work's just this thing that I gotta grind my way through so that I can get to the weekend. And
Right.
so, so like I'm trying to find kind of that creation story idea of like both work and rest are a gift from God, a
Amen.
command from God, and therefore a beautiful thing from God. But keeping that in healthy balance. And so I even mentioned sleep in the sermon as almost like God's built-in fail-safe system for those who want to pride themselves and I got it all under control. It's like, no, you don't. You gotta lay there unconscious, you know.
Absolutely.
Um, so I was just, I mean, yeah, thanks for saying yes, but I don't know. We can just talk all things sleep, rest, that kind of stuff. But I think before we got on, you were getting ready to tell me that you've got
Yeah, yeah.
like a presentation you do about, was it from like sleep from a biblical perspective or?
Yeah, well, I do a presentation for some of our alumni and donor groups and so forth, where I talk about the science of sleep, but I infuse some of the work we've done around why sleep is important for cardiovascular health and your nervous system health. That's kind of what my bread and butter research is. But even before I went to Baylor, I began to get just interested in sleep from a biblical perspective, right? And so I started researching sleep and rest, and there's like 170 occurrences across 13 translation of biblical text of sleep, and another 90 some of sleeping, and another 60 some where the Lord talks about asleep or sleeps, right?
Mm.
Sometimes sleep in biblical perspective is death.
Yeah,
You
euphemism for
know,
death. Yeah.
but then a lot of times sleep is sleep,
Mm.
and then you move on to things like rest, dream, slumber, naps. You got another over 1,000 references biblically. So you combine all of those, and God talks to us about rest and sleep over and over and over, biblically. And one of the ones that I really like to share, and I brought this up so I could share a couple of these, because I think God commands us to sleep for reasons that are good for us. So you think about two of the biggest things we have in our society today that plague us are anxiety and fear. And there's multiple texts where God points to, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, where God gives us sleep to battle anxiety. Daniel 2:1, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him.
Mm.
Right? And then you go to Matthew 11, 28, 29. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest.
Mm.
Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for the soul, right? So
Mm.
the people who are anxious, I always talk about, we study the intersect between anxiety in the nervous system and sleep, and how
Mm.
how much that leads to insomnia and some of these other issues. And then on the flip side, you've got fear, and we're so driven by fear in today's society. Yet a couple, again, very much so in the Old Testament, but Proverbs 3:24, if you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. And so
Mm.
there's just multiple biblical texts where it's a playbook for life. I mean,
Mm.
that's what I'm so blessed to have been able to have been there at St. Peter and Paul, which actually where my faith foundation started was back out in Chatham, Michigan.
Yeah.
Zion Lutheran there growing up, but then coming to Michigan Tech and then joining St. Peter and Paul just because of a conversation with Pastor Weber's daughter at an event at Michigan Tech one time, and then just carried that throughout my whole life. I've just been blessed where God has just pointed me towards great churches. We had a great church in Bozeman, and we got a fantastic church down in Waco now.
Uh,
But God gives us this playbook, and if you know we don't win salvation, we don't earn it, it's given to us. But the more and more you learn that, the more and more you desire to follow what God is saying, and because
yeah.
it's great for us, it's great for our health, it's great for our mind, it's great for our soul.
That's awesome, man. So like, I mean, in all seriousness, like from a obviously God commands sleep. Even, I mean, in my brief research, like everything with a central nervous system has to
Yeah,
sleep or rest to some degree. You know, the dolphins or whatever shut off half their brain, and
that's right.
that's
That's right.
crazy in and of itself. But they're still resting. And so like, what? I mean, what is it like if not God just building this into the way that the creation works, what else would it be that would um if basically from a secular scientific
Yeah,
perspective,
yeah.
what would be the reason for sleep like built into these organisms? I know like restoration or
Yeah.
cell growth and that kind of stuff, but is there
It,
is
it's
there anything
actually
there or-
it actually flummoxes a lot of people from that secular view, and why would this be there? Because you're at such risk during sleep,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Whether you're an organism or whatever, you're at risk for predation and all these other kinds of things. So it really flummoxes people that try to explain this from a purely secular perspective.
Right.
Scientists have been trying to explain this for years and years, and there's all kinds of different theories around it. Clearly, we do know that sleep is good for our immune system. It's good for cell reproduction. It's good for a lot of different things. But that doesn't mean that a designer didn't create it that way,
Yeah.
right? And so
Is there
it's
are I mean, along with that, is there any research being done? I'm just curious, like from that standpoint, like if they're to say, what's the point of sleep? Is there anybody kind of researching uh like development so that people wouldn't have to sleep? Is that is that is that
there's there's certainly people that are trying to figure out how to shortcut it. We see that all the time, right? And there are people trying to look at where along the different species, sleep kind of came in, exists, and how it develops. For example, I use this analogy a lot. I have this picture when I do my presentations, and I put up a lion, an elephant, and usually somebody who invited me for the presentation. So I'd have a picture of you, and I'd say, okay, which one of these animals
okay?
requires the most or least amount of sleep? If you had to guess, which of those animals requires the least and most amount of sleep? Between an
The was
elephant, a lion, and a human.
uh I would say a lion needs the most and an elephant needs the least.
You are right, but how dramatic it is. An elephant will only sleep about 3 to 4 hours a day.
Okay.
Lions will sleep up to 18 to 20 hours, and then we sleep 7 to 8 to 9.
Yeah.
And like we still, Aaron, one of the reasons I love the field of research of sleep is we still don't understand that. We are still trying to figure that out. We are still trying to figure out, why REM sleep, why slow wave sleep. And we haven't even talked about the different stages of sleep and what it
Yeah.
does for the human body and our rest. So it's one of these areas that it's fun to talk about. It's
Yeah.
fun to research, and everybody can relate to it because everybody sleeps. We spend a third of our lives sleeping.
Yeah, well, I mean, please feel free to go there because I mean, I remember some of this stuff from maybe high school biology class or something, REM, non-REM sleep, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But um, I was actually talking to my kids about this morning, like and saying, "Hey, what questions do you have about sleep?" And they have all kinds of questions, even just like why can't we remember when we fall asleep?
I
It's
know.
just like
I
stuff
know.
stuff stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, what's going on when
Going
we
on.
when we
Yeah.
sleep?
That's a let me dive into that real quick. I won't be long because I know we got a lot of potential questions here. But when you sleep, a typical sleep stage, you have kind of two halves of sleep. You have your first half night, which we is dominated by slow wave sleep or deep sleep. Okay, so this is when your brain is oscillating very slowly. We call those delta waves, right? And so the brain, it's the deepest stages of sleep, very hard to wake up from, and you kind of go through a couple, 2 to 3 cycles of this where you're getting down into stage three sleep. And that's one of the best types of sleep you can get. We start out as infants getting lots of that deep sleep, and it's so important for development, all kinds of things. But as we age, it just goes down and down and down till like when you're older, you might only get, maybe 5 to 10% of your night will be deep sleep. That's
Hmm.
actually one of the kind of areas that is being actively investigated is how can we use different kinds of strategies to help people as they age still retain that slow wave sleep. Acoustics, for example, I mean, if you sleep with different types of audios like white noise, brown noise, pink noise, sometimes that can help trigger for some people that deeper sleep. Second half of night is dominated by REM, rapid eye movement sleep. So if you ever seen your baby fall asleep and the
Mm,
eyes are
hmm.
fluttering, this is the second half of stages of sleep where you go into these blocks of REM sleep typically. And that's where a lot of learning and memory and restoration of the brain occurs. The first half is when your heart rate, your blood pressure go diving low, you release a lot of growth hormone, even later in life. I mean, I tell athletes all the time, hey, you want to get stronger and faster and bigger and do it legally and not shoot yourself up with growth hormone drugs, you get to sleep. In the first half of night, that's the highest quantity of growth hormone you'll release during the day is when you're in deep sleep. So like there's so much physiology
So
happening in
is that,
sleep.
I mean, not to divide like body and mind and stuff, because we are one, human that is
Yeah.
all of that. But are are you saying like that first part, is that more like your body is resting and restoring, and then later the REM
Brain.
sleep is more like your brain is doing
Yeah.
that stuff? Is that
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah, yeah. I
hearing?
mean, it's all like you said, connected, but where it seems to target and help with some of these interventional studies where they've artificially deprived REM sleep or slow wave sleep or disrupted it, and they see that when you lose a lot of REM sleep, it really impacts memory, and so we know that REM sleep is really important, and slow wave is really important for your body and your heart. So I mean, you got to sustain your whole body, you got to sustain your heart, your physical strength, your muscle. That's more in the slow wave sleep. And then to stave away dementia and Alzheimer's and those other kind of things, you need the REM sleep. The funny thing about REM sleep is you actually maintain it pretty well throughout your entire life. Another reason we try to figure out like why do we maintain REM sleep, but we don't maintain slow wave that decays with age. So like there's just so much cool physiology that the Lord has allowed us as scientists. And that's why I always say, your faith does not have to move you away from God. One of the coolest quotes I heard when I was interviewing with Baylor and talking to some of the guys. There was a guy there who had been there 50 years, Aaron, and just stayed at Baylor because it was the only place that was like committed at the highest levels. And he said, for me, Baylor exists if for nothing else to show that really smart people don't have to move away from God. And I
Yeah.
love that quote. I mean, I just love
Yeah.
it because you can study science, you can study the body. We can try to find ways to help people live healthier, longer lives. And I don't think the Lord is not wanting us to do that. He's presented science for us to study. So this idea that people think, oh, faith and science are against one another, people like me would argue nothing could be further from the truth. And the ancients who were awesome scientists who
Uh-huh.
helped us, discover gravity and all kinds of things, they were Christians.
Yeah.
The Christian church was the field that brought science and education to life. And so you're starting to see, I think, this swing back, Aaron, where
Yeah.
people are like, no, 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 you don't have to be an atheist to be a good scientist. You
Yeah.
can be a good scientist and believe that Jesus Christ died for our sins, was resurrected, and has saved us and made us right with God.
Yeah. Amen. Well, because that it actually it make it makes sense, because if I mean if and I don't believe this is an if statement, I believe it's a true statement. But if God is the creator, our savior and Lord, like he actually brought all these things into existence, then to start with him, to begin there, actually makes our science better, you
Yeah.
know well, it makes everything that we do better.
That's
It
right.
makes the way that we love better. It makes the way that we rejoice better. It makes the way that we suffer better because it's actually informed from the one who formed it. So yeah, I mean, I love that, man. And I, being here at Michigan Tech, we get to do a lot of conversations with really, really smart people, and a lot of them have that same sort of mentality, which is awesome. I wanted to go back to the REM sleep piece though. Is that the one where is that where we dream?
That's right. That's right. So REM sleep is our dream dominant stages of sleep. That's why if you wake up in the early in the night, oftentimes people will say, I don't remember my dreams when I wake up, like, just in the first half of the night. Some do. And these things aren't mutually exclusive. You have a little bit of REM in that first half, and you can get a little bit of deep sleep in the second half. But yeah, that second half of the night, that's why when you're waking up early in the morning and you kind of, you go through a 60 to 90-minute cycle of sleep, which is normal, by the way. I mean, waking up throughout the night is a normal phenomenon that gets worse as you age. And I think one of the things I try to tell people, because I study insomnia and how the nervous system plays a role with insomnia, is you can talk yourself into depriving yourself of more and more sleep because you're like, oh, I keep waking up, and
Yeah.
that's part of aging, and you have to accept it and then just go back to sleep. And so absolutely, the dreaming stages tend to happen in the second half of the night when you got all that REM sleep going on.
So what's going on with dreams?
Well, that is not my area of expertise. I
No?
do know people who like study dreams, and I mean it's some wild stuff. I mean the theories out there behind it, but I try to steer clear of it because I think that there's a lot more science that's needed. I just look though at like we see it's one of the oldest things we know about. If you look into the Bible,
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, that's
You see dreams and where
yeah.
God speaks through dreams, and I think that it's a state of it's a state of consciousness where it's so wild what's happening there. And so I don't really go into that too much, but what I do like to tell people is if you look biblically, is sleep was introduced in was it chapter 3, right? Chapter 2,
Where God
when
made Adam
God
fall.
God put man to sleep and created woman. I tell people, I mean, what came out of sleep? The greatest gift that God ever gave us, women. So,
Yeah.
I tell to my wife all the time. So sleep is introduced so early biblically. It threads throughout the entire Old Testament and into the New Testament with things even Christ preached to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, even Jesus slept,
Yeah. Even
you
Jesus
know?
slept.
Well, and I mean, and that
They woke him up in the boat and he calmed the storm, right?
I
I mean,
know.
even
Yeah.
Jesus slept, he rested, he wept. I mean, that's the amazing part is we've got no other world religion has a living God that came to us to save us, and we don't earn our way there. I mean, that's the thing. I probably in my time from where I was at there in Houghton to where I'm at now is just understanding that a lot better,
Mm.
understand having the maturation process to be able to now see that, and realize I think so many people are trying to earn their way to salvation, and it's amazing. I had the blessing of being able to do a Bible study with some of our freshmen this year at Baylor,
Really?
and I've been obsessed with. I'd love another talk sometime with you on the fruit of the Spirit.
Oh,
I've been studying Galatians 5:22-23 for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, and I've to the point where the president here recently asked me to do a community devotional that went super well, where one of
awesome.
the pastors of a local church came up because I was doing this in front of all these pastors. I was nervous there. And like, I don't get nervous. I don't get nervous very often for when I'm talking at a scientific conference. I'm just like, but here I am, like, I'm giving a devotional on the fruit of the Spirit. But one of the pastors like, that was really cool. Will you do that with my men's Bible study? And so it was
Ah.
encouraging. And it's so cool to be able to intersect with these students and to be able to dive into the word like that. But so many of our students, the reason I brought that up is so many of our students are very anxious. They're full of fear, Aaron, and they need to know, and they try to think that they earn their way. It
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
is heaven. And so it's encouraging to be able to spend some time with them, and to my leadership team is involved with it too. And it went so well that the chaplain is like, you need to take that and develop that into a chapel in the future. So we're
Ah,
right now thinking about how we can take this fruit of the spirit and do it as a chapel class so that more
yeah.
students can get exposed to this. It was just kind of a
That's
volunteer
awesome.
thing this past year. So yeah, I don't know. I
And
don't know if you're
I
hot on
love
the
how
fruit of
you're
the spirit.
I love how you're getting it right and saying it's the fruit of the spirit, not the fruits of the spirit,
Yeah,
by
well,
the way.
that's one of the things I talk about. I
Yeah,
mean, these things are not designed to be done alone.
exactly. Yeah.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I mean, I explain it like this. You got an apple. An apple is made up of a core and seeds and flesh and a stem. That's an apple. It's
Yeah.
all together, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not of ourselves, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
know we can't accomplish those things
Right.
consistently.
Right.
Oh,
Well, it's really interesting because I deal with a lot of college students as well,
yeah,
particularly in their troubled times. And again, yeah, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And I'll go to Galatians 5 a lot. There's it's just interesting in this last year. There's been a number of actually young men like coming with anxiety, depression. We talk about it uh, for everyone that I'm thinking of. There's also been pornography addiction,
absolutely.
and if not other coupled with other alcohol or other things like that. You get talking to them, and it's this. I think the devil's playbook, the result of sin is this separating us from God and from everything good. It's an undoing of the perfect creation story.
Mm,
So it's the separation between us and God, separation between us and other people, separation between us and what God designed us to do, even separation of us from ourselves, at death
mm,
at the end,
mm.
right? It's just this peeling apart. And so Satan wants to, I mean, he'll get us to question God's word,
That's right.
distort God's truth, even lie, if we're trying to, and then he gets people pinned in a corner, thinking,
No way
you
out.
you are all alone. Nobody cares about you. Nobody loves. It's all your fault, by the way, that you're in that corner, and you're the
Mhm.
one that's got to get yourself out, right? And it's just all a lie. Um,
Well,
yeah,
to
yeah.
that point, I mean, Peyton's right now at her school. They're diving into the C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters, and right,
Mm,
and just the distraction. I mean, that's the key element there. It's just the devil wants to distract, and the enemy wants to distract and separate you. And so it's and a big part of this, right, is when you're not sleeping well, you don't think right,
yeah.
right, and you're depriving yourself. I mean, alcohol wrecks your sleep architecture. I mean, we
Mm,
studied that. We published on that. I mean, we did a study that was funded by the National Institutes of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism at the
mm,
NIH. And we saw our goal there was to look at what happens with binge drinking. Not only does it wreck your sleep at night, especially your REM sleep, it leads to heightened cardiovascular risk the next morning. And so, I mean, I'm not here to say nobody should ever have a little bit of alcohol, but when you are constantly doing it and it's at the binge levels, it is really, really bad for your sleep. And that just compounds itself. And
hmm
now the enemy has you. Now the enemy has you in a corner, like you're saying, and just keeps backing you in. So just thinking about that differently
yeah.
and challenging. You mentioned young men, and we're seeing the same thing down in Waco at our church, Harris Creek, and we've got this program called Regeneration,
Uh,
where these kids come in and regen, and it just changes their lives.
uh.
And young men are the fastest growing Christian age group at the college level right now. And it's
Yeah, we're seeing it
encouraging
too.
because that's where God, I mean, back to the playbook, what God tells us. We're supposed to be as men the head of the Christian household. And so it's so encouraging because you see church and it's flooded oftentimes with females. And now you're starting to see more men come into church, young men wanting to think about things differently. But the pivot for them really comes when they realize, yeah, this is not something I can earn my way up to. It's a free gift. It's a gift of God, and it changes your heart.
Yeah. But also I think for men too, like kind of going back to this idea that we are one component, body and mind, and we're not we're not like just heart people, you know, it's not just the feelings that we have or the thoughts that we think. Like that's not our Christianity is not just limited to like a philosophy or a feeling, but to our whole life. And so, like even this conversation about like the integration between our Christian faith and our bodies, our sleep, our exercise, our the food we consume, you know, these kinds of things, like it's all integrated, and that's what makes it so much more real and profound, where it's like, oh, this actually matters, you know, what I believe is integrated with what I do. But like, but that's where I'll go in Galatians 5 with people too, is that connection, that whole thing, you know, the fruit of the spirit set up in contrast to the works of the flesh. And those
Absolutely.
and Paul there is basically saying, like, let us walk in step with the spirit. Let us walk in step with the spirit. And I see that, I've used this as an image with people too, because that word spirit, the pneuma in the Greek, it can also be translated as wind or breath. So sometimes we have a hard time understanding like the work of the Holy Spirit, but like I understand
Hmm.
how wind works, you know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so the spirit is blowing us towards Jesus, right, where we're made right with God, if you want to think about it like that. Um, and so there's a lot of people going back to like people trying to do it on their own.
Hmm.
They're living these works of the flesh, but they're walking against the spirit. And that's like walking into the wind, you know, the wind's blowing 50 miles an hour at you, and you're like, nope, not
I'm in.
windy out. It's not windy at all, you know? But if you just turn around and you walk in step with the spirit, it's like, oh, this is a better way. This is,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Well,
it's
it's
not till
funny
you
you bring
turn
that
around
up.
and yeah.
It's funny you bring that up because that's one of the things we talk about in our Bible study about the fruit of the Spirit is that it bookended in Galatians 5. You see that walk with the Spirit, and then he said, "Is it again?
Yeah.
Walk with the Spirit." And I love that analogy of the wind. The thing I tell them is as I study in my research aging, and I study everything as sleep ages and from a baby to later in life. And another analogy I give them on this in Galatians is, when you're a baby, you need physical help to walk. And
Mm,
unfortunately, later in life, you often need something to assist you in walking, a cane or somebody. And then we've got this middle part of our life where God willing, we feel invincible, but that doesn't mean we don't still need the Spirit, right? And
yeah.
you always need to depend upon the Lord. And our most dangerous spot is in that middle stages when we believe we're invincible. And you have to see that from the entire continuum of what God does when He creates and allows a human to be born to death, is that, these end bookends, we have to have people help us walk. It doesn't mean we don't, we need it throughout our entire lives, actually.
Mm, mm, love it. I mean, when you're talking about even from the beginning to death, and we kind of went here before, but biblically, especially in the New Testament, that word for sleep is often used when Christians are talking about another Christian dying,
Correct.
right? And what I've always heard and learned and taught people too is that it's for the Christian, it's a euphemism for death, because we believe so wholeheartedly in the resurrection from the dead.
Mhm.
That just as Christ rose from the dead, He will come again and raise us from the dead. And so, for the Christian, when we die in faith, our our confidence that we will wake up made new in Christ should be just as high as when we lay down on the pillow at night and close our eyes. Like, our expectation is, I'm going to wake
We
up
wake
and
up.
feel refreshed in the morning, you know?
That's right. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, that I think is when people begin to move from, the different phases of just being a kind of occasional Christian to reading a book one time with our associate pastor out in Bozeman is there's a point where you transition to a serious Christ follower, right?
Mm.
And when you make that transition to a serious Christ follower, a disciple, someone who lives is alive in Christ, as you guys have
Mm.
said, is a major mission and theme of St. Peter and Paul. You just look at things differently, and that's one of them. You go to sleep and you will wake up. We will always be made right in the mornings, and ultimately, there's going to be some morning when we wake up and we're standing there in heaven. And so,
Right.
I think there is a different confidence that we can have as Christians because we can have confidence in the Lord.
Yeah. Amen. Tying that back to like physical sleep though, like how much I feel like I've heard this somewhere, but how much of our body is regenerated in like a good night's sleep? Is there like is there a connection between like the idea of like almost like being made new, while we sleep? Is there something going on there physiologically?
Well, I
Or
mean, I think kind of like back to what you said, there's not, you can't subdivide our heart, our mind with our faith and the integration. Same thing. Sleep just amplifies a lot of things. So you see that you have more restoration and repair. It doesn't mean that during the day we don't have, cells dividing, cells repairing, but at sleep, it gives you that downtime for that to happen a little bit more accelerated and rapidly. So I kind of look at sleep as that downtime that just allows the body to sit there and recover. And that's why when we get sick, we need sleep, right? I mean, everybody has experienced this. Your body is run down. You need to allow the immune system to kick in, to work, all that kind of stuff. And fortunately, the Lord has allowed us to have sleep to be able to slow our body down enough to let the internal mechanisms do what they're designed to do. So
Mhm.
it's not that it's like there's some, magical thing that happens. I will say one of the coolest areas of research I'm following right now that I don't do, but I think is in sleep, is they're showing that there's like almost the equivalent of a lymphatic system in the brain that when you're in deep sleep, in that first stage of sleep, it flushes the brain in a way that we've never known before. Now that we have all these advanced imaging technologies, that is really important in getting rid of the beta amyloid that is highly associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so
Mm.
even there, God has created a piping system within our brains that only within the past 10 years we've been able to discover because of our imaging technologies.
Hmm.
And so when you're in that deep stage of sleep, the brain flushes out in a very, very unique way that we never knew was really happening before. And so that's the
Hmm.
cool part about science and being able to study how the body works. Now, that has only reinforced the idea that, man, we have to figure out ways to help people maintain that deep stage of sleep. Some people genetically have a propensity for sleep. I mean, it irritates me when I hear about these people who can just like hit the pillow and they're out and they wake up the next morning, they're totally refreshed. I mean, I wish I had that. Part of my reason I study sleep is because I've never slept super well, and my grandmother didn't sleep super well. And so there's
Hmm.
like, I think there's a genetic factor to some of this, but it doesn't mean that we can't set up good sleep habits, get off of our technologies. I have a whole series of things people should do as they get ready for bed, how they should prepare for bed.
Well, I actually wanted to ask that just to be helpful.
Yeah.
Whether I don't know if how much you want to get into it, but I know people just in our ministry here in our context that um have had, insomnia. They're waking up, they're you know, and I don't and I've talked to people and I don't want to I have a certain lane that I, counsel people towards, but I do want to be like holistic and stuff too. Even just yesterday, I was talking to a young guy that's going through some stuff, and we were, and he's at a low point, and I was asking him about his exercise habits, and he doesn't really have much, and so we were talking about how do you form a disciplined life. And he was saying, well, I'll work out when I feel like it, but I want to get better at working out. And I'm like, well, it's not just going to happen. Like we got to, put some structure on this. But okay. So I mean, I know exercise and water and eating well,
Yep.
are all helpful, and they go hand in hand probably with sleeping. But like what would be, a couple of things for folks, like if they're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, that they should, pay attention to?
Well, you're absolutely right in that exercise, physical activity, the amount of stress that you're under, and how you eat all impact it. We could unpack that for a full hour. The thing that I think is a low-hanging fruit for individuals is technology use. So right now, as we're speaking, and I'm on this computer screen, there's a lot of blue light being emitted, which for me right now is no problem. But at night, when you have blue light into your eyes, it actually suppresses the release of melatonin from the pineal gland in the brain. Well, you see all these people like now taking all this artificial melatonin, and I'm not a super big fan of that. I think that sometimes a place for that, especially if you're jet lagged and you're traveling and something. But I think chronic use, I think we're starting to get enough data to suggest you got to be careful with that. Self medicating yourself. It's FDA. You don't have to get it's FDA approved, right? But you can get it at any local store. But your brain does it by itself. So blue light, cut it down. Switch over to a reading, an actual back to what the Lord gives us. He gives us a Bible that you can open up physically and
Yeah,
read, and you feel yourself relaxing and going to sleep.
yeah,
So I think people stay too long on these things
yeah,
at night. They're watching TV. I mean, first thing a sleep physician will tell you is get a TV out of your bedroom. I mean, don't
yeah,
have it there. I mean, it's just not healthy. So creating a sleep environment, and then secondly, a routine, right?
yeah.
It is not really good for you when you're especially college students, right? They'll go to bed at 2 in the morning, and then have to wake up for class, at 6, and so they get 5, 6 hours of sleep during the weekdays, and then they completely binge on the weekends and sleep until 12, and get 10, 12 hours of sleep. Most sleep physicians will tell you try to stay within 1 to 2 hours of your weekday to what you do on the weekends. And the reason being is that we are now beginning to see that not only does sleep duration matter for some of these things, but your consistency of your sleep. So there's a rhythmicity, and we know this in life. There's a rhythmicity to everything, right?
God
And so
created day and
God
night. Yeah.
created rhythmicity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our blood pressure oscillates, everything oscillates. And you don't want to get your sleep habits too far out of whack. So, and the last thing I'll say is even with things like exercise absolutely is great. But as we age, exercising late in the evenings can really actually counteract sleep because you have this huge release of cortisol.
Hmm.
And cortisol can actually impede sleep. So even the timing that you do your exercise can matter. So many cool things, so many little things that you can do. And we call that like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And there's
Hmm.
so many ways to battle that. Almost 1 out of 2 people that strictly follow a CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia routine, actually get a lot better.
Hmm.
And then there are still some that need to consider, some of the pharmaceutical methods. But but there's a lot you can do.
Hmm.
And whether it's trying to journal and get rid of some of your anxious thoughts before you go to bed, all kinds of different strategies.
Yeah. My wife Abby, who in the last couple of years was doing a lot of research on blue light and that sort of stuff, and so she in the evenings wears like blue light blocking
Sure.
glasses,
That's
and
good.
makes her phone screen go red.
Mhm, mhm.
But we even got these light bulbs that we have in our like in our main living area that have I don't know what they are, but you can, like, if you flick the switch once, it's kind of mimics the morning light, and then you turn it off and turn it back on. And it's midday. Turn it off, turn it back on,
Wow.
and it's
Okay.
it's like it's evening light. And so in the evenings we'll put those lights on, and there is no blue light in those light bulbs for the
Mhm,
for the evening. And
mhm.
in these long dark winter days, it's
Yeah.
it's six
Well,
o'clock and we're like, I don't know, should we go
I
to
know.
sleep?
I know. Well, it's funny you mention all that because one of the coolest research projects that I'm excited about this next year, we just received funding. There's another guy at Baylor who also is big into sleep. And we're also partnering with a faculty member in our interior design program at Baylor. And we've gotten the thumbs up to modify some residence hall rooms because sleep in
Hmm.
college students is just wrecked when they come and live in dorms sometimes,
Yeah.
and they're letting us take some in using a kind of your classic randomized crossover design, which has never been done before.
Huh.
It's all been observational. These students are going to get randomly assigned to rooms that have had sleep adaptations, like you're talking about, and ones that don't, and then they're going to be getting some testing throughout the year to see, did it help them sleep, and did that correlate with changes in their mood and their grades and other kinds of things? Because we know sleep is so important for these students, and they're not getting enough of it. Sleep has really, really decayed in the past 10, 15 years, and it correlates really strongly, obviously, with iPhones and other technologies that are out there and available.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've thought about this too, even kind of going back to that concept of like we try to just do it ourselves. We try to, outwork the work. I mean, I love technology. I mean, this is allowing you and I to talk. I'm glad that we have light bulbs and all that stuff.
That's right.
But with the advent of all of that, like in my house, even though it's getting dark at 4:30 or whatever, I mean, if I wanted, I can keep that place popping, constantly if I want, like just, so, but if that wasn't there, and
We would have been asleep.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
would that be, I mean, would that be like, would that be the more natural way, is that as the days or as the nights are longer, like in the winter, like, would
You
there,
should sleep more. Yeah,
yeah, is
yeah,
that right?
absolutely. That's absolutely right, and it's been shown. And in fact, people who have had some serious kind of, there's these desynchrony models where, because we've only talked about sleep, but then there's the whole concept of circadian rhythm, right, and light, dark, and all that kind of stuff. And they've taken these people who have massive sleep problems, and they've actually take them out in the wilderness, and they've had to learn how to adapt to sleep like the ancients used to have to sleep, and it can completely cure them of their problems because of this artificial situation that we
Mm.
put ourselves in. So absolutely, if you look at people, because of the light situation, you sleep less in the summers and you sleep more in the winters, and it's because of that light dark circadian rhythm. So shouldn't fight it, and we shouldn't sit there and try to force ourselves to stay up a lot later. Although I will tell you, being back here in the Midwest, and I'm in Madison right now, and just seeing, how dark, how early it gets dark, and
Yeah.
and then you couple that with being over the Great Lakes, and maybe you'll get a blue sky occasionally in December, January, February, but it's gray, and so we
Yeah.
need light. So I'm thankful for light too, but at some point you got to just you got to just accept that the Lord's telling us it's time to put our head down and rest and wake up the next morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. What else are we missing, anything that would be helpful for folks? I'm trying to, even I wrote down a couple of things, but
No,
uh,
I mean, I think I'll go back. I'd love to listen to your sermons. I do that every once in a while. I pick up. I still get your link for this stuff through my. I kept my tech email as kind of like my personal email because I'm a graduate of tech, so I get to keep it, and so I follow what's going on there. So I'm going to go back and listen to it. I'm uh always eager and just thirsting for more ways that people are looking at God's creation. You can study this stuff lifetimes, and it's
yeah,
just you learn more and more. But I think our take home here for your listeners is just take seriously the biblical instructions that God has. We are to rest, we are to sleep, and that's okay. And don't be overly concerned if you have one or two sleepless nights. I mean, that just happens, but be consistent, be disciplined like you're talking about. And honestly, I mean, go see a physician if and talk to your physician. This is something we don't talk enough about. I mean, a family physician, when you go in for your checkup, rarely asks you to talk about your sleep, but
Hmm.
they'll take every other measurement. Yet you think about it, and you take one snapshot of your blood pressure, and then yet we sleep a third of our lives and we never talk about, hey, how's your sleep going? So I do think we're trying to change that. I think, some of the organizations have done a great job of prioritizing the importance of nutrition, hydration, physical activity. I just think sleep is way behind. And you
Hmm.
think about it, it wasn't until 1953 that we even discovered REM sleep. I mean, so it's a
Hmm.
relatively young scientific field, even though historically we can see things like in the Bible about sleep for very, very long time ago, but we're just still trying to learn a lot more about it. So it's been
Yeah.
fun catching
Yeah.
up with you
Oh
and
my goodness.
talking with you. And please say hi to people back there. Say hi to Abby and everybody. I mean, we miss you guys, and
Yeah.
we're doing well. But do miss our St. Peter and Paul family.
Yeah. No, I mean, man, this has been a true joy. When I reached out, or I thought about, contacting you for this, and I did a Google on you and to find I didn't know you still had your tech email, so I was looking for a current one
Yeah.
and found you, and I read your bio, and I was like, he's got so much stuff going on. It was this like, I don't know, the devil telling me not to, not,
Don't reach out.
I almost didn't. And then I was like, well, at least tell him you were thinking about him, praying about him. And if he wants to do this, he will. And, so I just super grateful for your time. But what's even more rewarding is, obviously we hung out when you were here, but it's super cool to see how God has continued to deepen your faith in this holistic integration of your study and your faith and your research and the proclamation of the gospel. It's just super, super cool to see that in your life. And man, and pray God's blessings for you and Kathy and Peyton. So man, I just appreciate it. Thanks so much
Oh,
for your time.
hey, it's been a pleasure. I'm so encouraged by what you guys are doing back there and being a light in that community. Thank you for that too. I mean, it can be a dark place for people, and the fact that you're reaching out to college students, I just want to encourage you and the rest of your team there to keep doing that. We need it. I mean, this is it's such a critical time point in development, and I do think I look now and people talk about missions fields, and I do think that there's a place for global missions. And Kathy and I have been talking about more of that. But man, I got a mission field right in my backyard with these college
Amen.
students. There's so many of them that are lost, and we just got to keep working on them. And it's when you see them, make that transition and accept the Lord, there's nothing more rewarding. So anyway, keep up the good work there too, because Michigan Tech needs this.
Thanks, buddy.
All right,
Appreciate it. Thanks so
hey
much.
man. All right.